What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. I am the house hacking mom, and today we're going to be talking about my experience thus far switching from using a non-stick skillet to using now a cast iron skillet. And I got the inspiration to make this video because recently my non-stick 12-inch skillet, which I absolutely love, I used it multiple times a week for everything from fried eggs, pancakes to fried rice, and I used it all the time. It was a very well-loved piece of kitchen equipment, and it gave up the ghost finally after about a year and a half, because that is the fatal flaw of non-stick cookware, is that it has a shorter life compared to stainless steel or cast iron. And when doing research about using cast iron versus using non-stick, it seemed like a very polarizing topic on the internet. People either have been using cast iron for years and years and years, absolutely love it, swear by it, use nothing else, or they say it's too much trouble, too much effort to take care of, it's too heavy and not worth the effort of using cast iron compared to using non-stick. So I decided that this would be an interesting thing for me to document, both for myself and for you guys if you have ever considered using cast iron instead of using a non-stick skillet, because most of us only use our cast iron skillets for cornbread or maybe for pizza, which is what previously is basically all I ever used my cast iron for. And I will put that recipe in the cards up here. It makes a fantastic pizza crust. But those are really the only things I ever used my cast iron skillet for. And it pretty much just sat at the bottom of my cabinet. I rarely pulled it out because, like people say, it is heavy and it is just so much easier to reach for the lightweight non-stick choices that I had. But in theory, a cast iron skillet can be used for all the same things that a non-stick skillet can be used for. And as someone who genuinely really liked my non-stick skillet, I used it all the time. I think if you can convince me that cast iron is at least comparable, if not better, then you can probably convince anybody that cast iron is the better cookware option. So just a super quick overview of the differences between a non-stick and cast iron skillet. Non-stick, of course, as the name implies, has usually a Teflon coating on the outside of the pan that keeps food from sticking to it, and they work really, really well. You can fry almost anything in it, from really delicate fish to eggs, and you don't have to use a lot or sometimes even any fat in addition to your skillet to keep food from sticking, and you're going to get really great results with your cooking. And so that is one of the potential health benefits of using a non-stick skillet, is you have to use less fat. You don't have to use as much butter, canola oil, olive oil, whatever fat your usual choice of frying is, compared to a cast iron skillet, which, if it's properly seasoned, does have a non-stick-esque coating to it, but it's not definitely as strong of a non-stick quality as a actual Teflon non-stick pan. So you do still have to add fat to a cast iron skillet, and it also has to be properly preheated before you add food to it, or food will definitely stick. So that is something I have learned over the past 2.5 weeks of using my cast iron skillet, is you need to make sure that you really get your pan pretty hot before you add food. Otherwise, the food will stick no matter how much fat you are using. Another main difference between non-stick and cast iron: non-stick should not be heated. It depends on the brand, but generally speaking, should not be heated greater than 350 to 400 degrees. Otherwise, it can emit some bad fumes into your air, and that is obviously not good. So you cannot use a non-stick, generally speaking, in the oven. For example, if you were going to be doing a one pan meal like a skillet shepherd's pie, where you're going from the hot stove top to right under the broiler, you cannot use a non-stick skillet for something like that, because that's just not good, not healthy for you. Whereas a cast iron skillet can be used under pretty much any temperature. They're extremely durable, basically non-destructible as far as the actual skillet itself is concerned. You pretty much can heat it, make it cold, do whatever you want with it. It's not going to hurt it. Another difference is nonstick. You do not want to use anything metal on it. So you're going to be using plastic, wooden, or some other non-stick tools when you are using your non-stick skillet, as opposed to a cast iron skillet, which you can use anything you want. I have been using chiefly metal on mine, and it works really great.
This is the actual metal spatula that I really like to use with my cast iron skillet. It is made by OXO, and it's actually called a fish turner. And I like it because it reaches almost all the way across my pan. It works to flip everything from pancakes to really big fillets of salmon.
As far as cleaning goes between nonstick and cast iron, when you're cleaning your nonstick pan, you want to pretty much just use gentle materials to clean it, because you can loosen that Teflon coating and shorten the lifespan of your nonstick skillet. Whereas with cast iron, you do not want to use soap on it, because that will deteriorate the seasoning that you have probably worked so hard to create, and you don't want to do that. So if you can avoid it, you don't want to use any soap. You can use water to clean your cast iron skillet. It's not going to hurt it, as long as you properly dry it before putting it away. If cast iron is wet at all anywhere, it will rust because it's made out of iron. So you have to make sure that you properly dry your cast iron skillet before putting it away. Another main difference, obviously, cast iron is really heavy. Oof. These things are really, really heavy. So what I find, and what I actually see a lot of people who regularly cook with cast iron, is they do not actually put their cast iron skillets away. Any sort of cast iron cookware that they use very regularly just lives right there on the stovetop. And they don't put it away because it's too much effort to constantly be lugging that much weight out from your bottom cabinets, which is where most of us store our cookware. So I have been trying that out, just leaving my cast iron skillet out on my stovetop even when I'm not using it. And even though I'm a minimalist and I like to have as little out as possible, I'm also someone who cooks a lot. I love to cook, and I don't feel like cast iron is ugly to look at, and I don't mind it thus far living on my stovetop. So those are all the major differences that I can think of at the moment between cast iron versus non-stick skillets. If you can think of any other big differences, please put them down in the comments below, both for my own benefit and for everyone else who is going to be watching this video. So what has my experience actually been thus far using my cast iron skillet instead of using a non-stick skillet? And as you saw in the title, this is just part one of my cast iron review. So my plan is to use the cast iron skillet regularly. Every time I would have normally used my non-stick skillet, I'm going to use my cast iron skillet for, I don't know, 2 to 3 months, because I think you really have to use something a decent bit to really get the hang of it and to decide how much you truly like it. I've used it for about 2.5 weeks. I have made everything I would have normally made in my non-stick skillet. I have fried eggs. I have made several batches of pancakes. I have fried rice in it. I have even made my skillet shepherd's pie in it. And I'll put that recipe up here. In the video, I am using a stainless steel skillet, but I was able to use my cast iron skillet and it worked just fine. After that particular dish, just because of all the potatoes, and I made it at night and I knew it was going to be sitting out and I wasn't going to be cooking in it again in the next few hours, I did put it in my sink and actually wash it with some water and just a stainless steel scrubber relatively lightly, and then I put it on my stove top over medium heat to make sure I got all the liquid evaporated off, and it seems to be fine. I used it just a little while ago to make some toasted sandwiches, which turned out delicious. So thus far, it has been able to do everything that my non-stick skillet could do, plus one more thing, which is to go from a stovetop to a 500-degree oven, no problems, and I do really like that part of it. Otherwise, when using it, I have liked the fact that I don't have to wash it. The main complaint that I saw on the internet of using a cast iron skillet is that you have to do a bunch of special care to it to keep the seasoning intact on your cast iron skillet. Well, I have not thus far found that to be true, and I did read a lot from other people who have used cast iron regularly, and they say that they rarely wash it and they rarely season it because they use it often enough that the food they are cooking in the cast iron skillet just kind of constantly naturally re-seasons it, and all they usually do between cooking food in it is just wipe it out. Now, I will say that I found it personally necessary to designate a few kind of junk cloths to cleaning out my cast iron skillet, because even if your cast iron skillet is clean, because of the seasoning layer in it, it will put dark smudges on your tea towels. So if you have towels that you really like or that are usually sitting out in your kitchen and you display, you do not want to use those sorts of cloths to wipe out your cast iron skillet because it will leave dark smudges. So that's just an example. Now this is out of my, clean for a cast iron skillet. Your cast iron skillet is never going to be perfectly clean as, say, a stainless steel skillet because you're not using soap on it, and you actually want to leave the seasoning coat, which is basically an oil coating that seeps down into the pores of the iron. You want to leave that oil on your pan, so it's always going to be a little dirty, and that is just kind of the way it's supposed to be. You just want to wipe out the excess, and once you get it to looking, nice and shiny, and it doesn't feel sticky, you can drag your fingers over it easily. Your fingers aren't catching anywhere, then you've got it clean enough. And that's about all you have to do for your cast iron skillet. So for example, when I just did my sandwiches in here, even some cheese fell in there, I was able to just wipe it out with one of these junk rags that I have here, no problems, and I did not have to set it in my sink at all. So in that way, it's sort of easier than my non-stick skillet, because that I would have had to put in the sink. I would have washed it with a sponge and soap and had to dry it. This, all I had to do was take 15 seconds and wipe it out with a rag. So in that way, the cast iron skillet seems to be a little bit easier to use. Now, one issue I will say that I have had with using the cast iron skillet is that, one, it takes a little while longer, it seems, to heat up. I think just because it's a much thicker metal, it does take a little bit longer to preheat it compared to using a nonstick skillet. And also it definitely has some hot spots. So I do not have a gas stove top. It's just an electric coil stove top. And I always heat it over the largest burner to give it the most surface area to heat up, but still the center definitely gets noticeably hotter than the outside. So when I made pancakes, for example, the center portion of the pancake definitely browned a little bit more than the outer part of the pancake. Didn't really seem to affect the actual pancake itself as far as flavor and fluffiness and how the pancake turned out, but from the aesthetic standpoint, it did make it a little bit different. Now, I usually make 3 pancakes at a time in a 12-inch skillet, so they're not very big pancakes, they're about this size, but if you wanted to make perfectly beautiful pancakes, you would probably just want to do one at a time, really large pancakes, and it would produce a more pretty pancake because it's going to be equally browned all around the outside. Something you can do, and I have not tried this yet for my cast iron skillet, but you can preheat them in the oven, so then it's going to be a perfectly even heating all around your skillet. So for pancakes, for example, you'd probably want to preheat your oven to about 350 degrees. Put your cast iron skillet in there as the oven comes up to temperature. Once it comes up to temperature, you would then put it on your stove top, turn it to medium, medium-low, and then proceed with cooking your pancakes. And that would probably give you a much more even heating experience compared to just heating it over the stove top, which is what I have done thus far. The main things I miss about my nonstick skillet are probably the even browning for the pancakes and just the lightweightness of it. I did like how lightweight that pan was, but since I'm not moving my cast iron skillet from down in the cabinet to up on the stovetop, since I've made that switch, and I did that about a week ago, I have more positive feelings about my cast iron skillet. So again, I will make another video in, say, about 2 months, and we'll see if I have decided that I'm going to continue to use my cast iron skillet or if I'm going to throw in the towel and just buy another nonstick skillet. I am going to link down below the nonstick skillet that I have used up until now. It's the OXO nonstick skillet and it works wonderfully. So if you are convinced that nonstick is all you ever probably want to use, this is a really great nonstick pan, and it lasted me almost 2 years, which is a pretty good life for a nonstick skillet, especially considering how much I used it. And this cast iron skillet is the Lodge cast iron skillet. It has worked great. It comes pre-seasoned. Now, I did go ahead and season it, I think 3 times before I really started using it, and there are tons of videos you can look up about seasoning cast iron, but basically, guys, all you have to do is take a tiny bit of oil, like hardly any at all, either a couple drops in here, or just turn your oil over onto your cloth, rub it really good all over the pan, inside and outside, and then put it upside down in a 500-degree oven for about an hour. And that basically helps to set the oil down into the pores of the iron and will give it that non-stick shiny finish. If you don't use it super often, you're probably going to need to season it every couple uses, because if it's going to be sitting in the back of your cupboard and you're not using it and you're not looking at it, it would really be a shame if it started to rust because there was a part of it that wasn't properly seasoned, or there was a part of it that got wet when you put it away and you didn't know. So if you're going to be putting it away, especially for long-term storage, I would definitely recommend going ahead and seasoning it so you know it's going to be ready to use the next time you want to use it. All right, guys, so that is my review thus far. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I make videos like this every week about frugal living, minimalist parenting, and healthy eating. See you in the next video. Bye.